All right, it's day 16, and yesterday in the transmission series, I promised that we were going to talk about LinkedIn. So there's tons I want to cover, and this may either be one episode or two episodes. We'll see how far I get, because there's actually quite a bit as I'm going through this that I realize I want to discuss about the difference in energy between specifically LinkedIn and or Meta, or rather, Instagram and or Meta and LinkedIn, and how that can affect the way that you show up. So I'm just going to dive right into this today because I think this is going to be super valuable for you if you have been sort of sitting on the sidelines and trying to work out how all of this energetic work can actually look practically on a tactical level, okay? So the first thing we want to get over is this idea that LinkedIn is like Instagram with a suit on, because it's not, okay? I spend the majority of my business energy on LinkedIn. I personally like to post on Instagram, and sometimes I cross-post stuff, but everything you see on Instagram, unless it is an absolute experiment of mine, is actually generated from what I have first put on LinkedIn. So if you follow me on both platforms, you'll see that I operate on tactically a LinkedIn first strategy always. And I have about 4,000 connections and followers on LinkedIn. There's kind of a difference between a connection and a follower. A connection is someone who is able to then send you a direct message through the platform, and you have to actually accept them as a connection. A follower is much the same as on any other platform where it's like a passive, I want to follow you, and indicating that means that that person's content will show up in your feed, but you still are not actually connected, as in able to have a one-to-one conversation in the direct messages. So there's kind of two levels of connection that are available on LinkedIn. So all said, I have about 4,000 or so on the LinkedIn platform, which for me right now at this moment is actually my largest social media following. I hate that term. I will digress and let you know that about 18 months ago, I had almost 10,000 followers on Instagram, and I deleted a whole bunch when I realized that my content didn't make any sense for that audience. I have had the account since 2012. When I used to post about like paint and DIYs and home improvement and all of those things. And I no longer post about any of that anymore. And so my audience was really brutally diluted on Instagram. So I went through the painstaking task of deleting a whole bunch of followers. I don't know if that helped me or hurt me, but I don't use it as a primary marketing tool anyway. So that's just an aside for you to know that I did that, and that if you're feeling like you want to do that, that there's no harm in going through that process. Other than that, it's intensely manual, and there's no easy way to do it. Okay, so here's what I see though on LinkedIn is that folks, I get this, and I'm kind of studying this. It's really funny, and it might be confirmation bias, and it's definitely the algorithm, but I'm seeing a lot of posts on Instagram from coaches and executive strategists saying like, don't stay on Instagram, come over to LinkedIn, because that's where you're going to grow your business. And what happens is that then you see people bringing Instagram like tactics over to LinkedIn, and they wonder why it's not working. So that whole like hook and scroll strategy, the drop a flame emoji if you agree kind of engagement bait, the comment, please below, and I'll send you XYZ resource. Just so you know, like on Instagram, there's an automation called ManyChat that functions when it sees a certain comment word, it'll DM the resource. It's an automated bot that you set up. ManyChat does not work with LinkedIn. So if you're using that tactic of like comment below with pink elephant and I'll send you my survey results or whatever it is, you still manually have to do that. And FYI, you also have to be a first connection with someone to send them a direct message. So that engagement type of ploy doesn't scale on LinkedIn at all. And so when I see somebody using it, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. They're working with an Instagram coach and thinking that this is going to work on LinkedIn, and it really doesn't. So the fundamental difference between the two platforms is that Instagram and LinkedIn serve different audiences and truly, truly different purposes. So Instagram, we know this, it's about identity, it's about aspiration. People are there to numb their brains. They're there to be entertained. They're there to be inspired. And I don't care what people say. They actually want to see curated versions of the lives that they want, whether it's curated vulnerability, curated authenticity, curated like perfection. They're scrolling quickly. They're looking for aesthetic. They're looking for feeling. They're looking for escape. They're looking to shop. They're looking to soothe themselves. The content that works on Instagram is, we know this, visually striking. There's a visual hook. It's emotionally resonant for that reason. And then it's aspirational and entertaining. And on LinkedIn, however, the difference is that it's less about identity and aspiration, and it's much more about competence and credibility. So people are going to LinkedIn to learn and to evaluate, to demonstrate expertise, and to stay current in very specific niche industries. They're not really looking to be entertained. They're on LinkedIn looking for insight. They're looking for evidence of thought. And they're also looking for signals that you, as an expert in your field, actually know what you're talking about. I just saw a post yesterday of a guy who was clearly a financial planner and an insurance salesperson. And this week, the markets dropped significantly. And he posted a screenshot of the markets all red and then wrote a whole post about like, you know, you just lost, if you had $1 million portfolio, you just lost $200,000 in one day in the market and your investment advisor still got their commission. That doesn't seem ethical. Come buy from me. And that might fly on Instagram. That post would have generated clicks on Instagram because it was a very striking visual of everything being red, right? But what happened in the comments is I went and I looked at the comments because I was interested to see what kind of response this guy was going to get. And they absolutely lambasted him. They were like, oh man, will you post the same thing when everything goes green next week? Like, dude's been waiting 6 months to post about this just to turn around and sell his product as a product-driven thing with no actual basis in reality. The markets go up and down all the time. This is not truly a thought leadership post. This is just, you know, a ridiculous statement with no backing. So his comment section turned on him very, very quickly because the content was not demonstrating his expertise at all. So people on Instagram are following you for who you are. And on LinkedIn, they're actually following you for what you know. Instagram, and this is why, you know, we talked yesterday about identity and how I was in this like identity of being a former news anchor and a journalist and a former blogger. And at the latter tail of my blogging career, folks would have called me an influencer. They really would have, especially the brands that I worked with. So that's why Instagram worked for me, because Instagram is personality driven, but LinkedIn is competence driven. So if you're just a personality on Instagram and then you come over and you try to be on LinkedIn and you don't know how to articulate your competence, and the only thing that you've gotten really good at is talking about your personality and your personhood and your personal brand, you're going to have a really hard road to travel making that transition. Because the biggest mistake I see is people trying to build a personality on LinkedIn the way they would have on Instagram. Like I had this, you know, there's a coach who's on Instagram right now and has a relatively good following and seems to make tons of money by selling her lifestyle and her yearning on Instagram. That's her shtick. It's like, I wanted this, so I created it. And if you come work with me, I will teach you how to create what I have. I saw a few months ago, all of a sudden she popped up on LinkedIn. And I was like, this is an interesting transition. I don't think this is going to work. And it didn't, because she was treating the comment section of LinkedIn like Instagram, talking about like sweaty armpits and you know, how sexy her husband is, or like things like that. And I was like, oh, this is not going to work on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is not the place to have that conversation. And your LinkedIn audience is not there, for example, like for your morning routine or a vulnerable moment or behind the scenes content without competence-driven context. They are there to help to see if you help them solve a problem. So you could talk about the morning routine, but you have to contextualize it so that it offers that competence level value. It shows that you are worth paying attention to, not that you are just trying to generate attention. So here's specific things that don't work on LinkedIn. I made so many notes, you guys. I'm so sorry. Like, you might have to listen to this like 3 or 4 times, but I like had this massive download and I just made like all of these notes. So I'm just going to keep running through it. So here's what I see people doing on LinkedIn that does not work. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but this is kind of what I observed, is like this whole hook and scroll tactic it's like a bait and switch, right? Like, you won't believe what happened to me, or this one mistake cost me $1 million, or the secret that they don't want you to know. That kind of stuff works really well on Instagram because it's like, ooh, this is salacious. But on LinkedIn, it reads, if you do this every single post, it's going to read as clickbait. And executives and busy people who are on LinkedIn do not have time for that. They will scroll right past because they're like, I don't want to know your secret. I want to know your thinking. The next one is what I kind of just alluded to, which is like performative vulnerability. I cried in my car today, and here's why. I almost gave up on my business. I'm being so real with you right now. Those things work on Instagram, and because on Instagram, vulnerability is a way to create connection and aspirational context. But on LinkedIn, if you do this over and over again, without actually anchoring them in why you are talking about that from a competence and expertise level, all you're doing is sharing an emotional journey without professional insight. So you can certainly say, I cried in my car today and here's why. We just got back from a really big pitch meeting and I was up all night with sick kids and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to pull it off, but I went into the washroom, I splashed my face with water, I went in there and I told a story and they understood it. And here's what I learned about that moment of pitching my business when I was not in an optimal state. Okay, that might work on LinkedIn. Not every day, but that is the turn you need to make on LinkedIn. Other than that, it can't just be like, oh, motherhood is really hard, right? I already talked about this off the top, but that whole like engagement thing of like, drop a flame emoji if you agree, or what's your biggest struggle? Tell me in the comments. Like, the algorithm doesn't reward that kind of thing the way that it does on Instagram. And the audience might kind of find it, frankly, annoying. So don't be asking like senior people or people who are going to hire you from LinkedIn to be dropping emojis. You actually want to create real dialogue. And there's an interesting new thing that happened on LinkedIn in the last, few months, where now if you comment on someone's post, if your comment is a really solid, well-reasoned comment, it will generate its own views and you can see how many views your comment got. So if you're out there just like dropping flame emojis on people's posts, A, the comment is not going to do very well and it's going to hurt your brand. B, people can see you doing that. and that doesn't show, again, there's any level of competence there. Whereas if somebody posts something, I'll go back to the example of the guy who posted about the markets going red. The people who commented were like really well reasoned as to why his post made no sense. They were displaying their own expertise in the comments. The other thing I see is, and this is always a telltale sign of somebody who isn't really familiar with the platform, is that they're using aesthetics over substance. So pretty graphics, generic quotes, carousels that say nothing, quote cards with platitudes, all those things that for whatever reason really work on Instagram do not work on LinkedIn. If there is no actual insight, nobody cares how pretty it is. In fact, text-based posts with just one simple photo at this point in time tend to be doing better on LinkedIn than anything else, like unstyled. You're better off not having an attachment and just having a really good post. The other thing, I think this is, just to round this all out, is like anything that screams personal brand influencer does not work on LinkedIn. So like 5 things I do every day, my productivity hacks, the top 10 things I bought on Amazon this month, not going to work. Not going to work. They care about whether you can solve their problem and whether you're able to stay in your lane and demonstrate expertise. So what actually works? Let's just break this down based on what isn't working, is to lead with your insight, right? So for example, instead of saying, I was so frustrated in a client meeting today, say, this is a communication breakdown that I see in organizations constantly, and it happened to me today. Let me explain. LinkedIn audiences will respond more to that kind of framing. You also want to write as if you're speaking to a peer rather than a follower. And this is huge. So on Instagram, we've talked about this. There's like this guru follower dynamic where you are actually, regardless of what your intention is, there's an element of teaching down to your audience. But on LinkedIn, you have to recognize that what you're doing is speaking to peers. You are not, there is a different playing field on LinkedIn. So you're saying, here's what I'm noticing. Here's what I'm thinking about. Here's a pattern that I'm seeing. Versus on Instagram, where it's like, let me teach you this basic thing that you should probably already know. There's like a tonal difference in terms of how you show up. It's really important on LinkedIn to be showing your work and not just wins. Instagram is a lot about showing the win. Here's how much money I made this week. Man, if you post that on LinkedIn, you will eventually get lambasted. Somebody will call you out. Because I guarantee you, there's people on LinkedIn making way more money than you. So posting about that really is not going to help you. What they want to see is the positioning shift that you went through in order to activate a percentage increase in revenue. You're not actually bragging about the revenue. You are sharing the work that you did in order to achieve that result. That's what builds the credibility. It's not actually about, hey, I made this much revenue. Come work with me. I'm better than you. That's Instagram. It's, oh, I noticed this. I changed this. Here's what was hard about it. Here's what came up that we didn't expect that made it awesome. And here was the result. What do you think about that? Okay, that's a LinkedIn, right? You want to also, just back to the comments, is that would be the same thing as if somebody asks a question in your niche or something like that, and you have an actual response that would add value to the conversation, add it. Engage thoughtfully, not performatively. None of this like, you go girl kind of stuff that you see on Instagram. Every once in a while, if somebody has a huge celebration, you know, you do see it. A CEO has a baby, or somebody gets married, or, you know, they sell their company. Like the celebratory posts, it's okay to be like, congratulations, this is awesome. I've so enjoyed watching this journey, right? That's okay, but not on everything. And the last thing I'll say is you want to be on LinkedIn and post consistently, but not constantly. So I post realistically 4 to 5 times a week on LinkedIn. I don't generally post on the weekend unless I have something really outstanding that I want to say, or something just hits me and I'm like, oh, this is an awesome post, and I'll just write it on the weekend. But it very much is a Monday to Friday platform. So just be aware of that. And if you're just starting, like posting twice a week, 3 times a week with a really awesome post is all you really need. You don't need to be doing the Instagram dance of like posting a reel, a carousel, a blah, blah, blah. I don't even know what the rules are on Instagram anymore, to be honest. So this is where my head is when I'm talking about energy, because this, and we talk about lenses through which you're filtering your story. And I would invite you to, if you are so focused on like being tunnel vision on Instagram is how I grow my business, especially if you're a small business, just think for a second about the energy that you're giving into. And would you be better served by showing your work rather than the aesthetic? Would you be better served by speaking to a room of peers who can uplift you and enhance you rather than speaking down to an audience that you're trying to get to buy from you? Like there's just a totally different energy. And when I realized that, LinkedIn became a really awesome space for me to test out the limits of this new identity that I have been evolving into over the last however many years. And I really enjoy it there. I learn a lot of things. I have been able to connect with really cool people. I have met people and, colleagues who I now have regular coffee chats with on LinkedIn. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that your likelihood of interacting with somebody on LinkedIn in a meaningful way, connecting with them, sending them a personal note saying, hey, Sarah, I saw what you posted. I'm in a similar space. I really loved what you said. It was really thoughtful and provocative. I'd love to connect with you. Sarah accepts your connection request, and then you send a DM, have a conversation about what she posted. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that your likelihood of turning that into a real relationship is way higher than on Instagram. Way higher, because on Instagram, everybody is braced for, oh, she's going to try to sell me on something. On LinkedIn, it's like, oh, maybe there's a collaboration here. Maybe we can learn from each other. Totally different vibe. Totally different vibe. So if you are thinking about jumping into LinkedIn, stop trying to be an influencer and start being a peer. Stop optimizing for Instagram-like engagement and start optimizing for respect and conversation. Stop performing vulnerability and instead consider how you demonstrate competence. Consider how you draft posts that show that you think, that you are considering the problem. And stop treating it like Instagram and treat it more like you are in a professional conference room. There's cool people, there's fun to be had, there's lots of great conversations, there's lots of learning, and there's definitely business there for you. You just have to know how to show up in your authentic self, in your competence, and it will start working. I'm really excited because I have a whole new plan for how I'm going to show up on LinkedIn starting in the next couple of weeks that I've been developing since about September. And it's all based on this. And I'm really pumped to see how it turns out because I don't have a lot of high hopes, right? Like I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, if I get a couple new clients from LinkedIn in the next few months, like I'm set. That's all I need. So I just got to focus on what I know. I don't have to focus on like posting schedules and Canva graphics and all this other. I just got to focus on what I know and show up telling people that I know that and ask them about what they know. It's super simple. So your practice right now is to are you on LinkedIn? Get on LinkedIn, look at the platform, consider it. If you are on LinkedIn, then look at your last 3 to 5 posts and ask yourself with all honesty, are you truly demonstrating competence or are you performing personality? And if it's the latter, then start posting what you actually know and what you see and what you understand about your industry that others might not. Show them that you're a peer. Show them that you're credible. Do all of those things, and I guarantee the platform will start to feel a lot less stuffy than maybe you think that it is. So in drafting all of this, I also thought of something I want to talk about tomorrow, which I know goes a little bit against the whole transmission thing and having it be in the moment, but I'm also letting this evolve really naturally. So for tomorrow, I want to talk about profit. I want to talk about these unsexy truths about profitability in business. And I have this feeling that I'm going to say things that you've maybe not heard past coaches or business mentors say to you, especially if you have a business that is less than 6 figures. You are making less than 6 figures in your business. Tomorrow's show, I won't say it's going to blow your mind, but it's probably going to give you a lot to think about. And I'm still in the stage of pulling it together. So I will see you back here on the feed tomorrow.